Hello lovelies, my name's Feta and welcome to Fable Academy, where adventurers old and new learn from the best, but usually the worst. Now, before anyone says anything, yes, I'm still alive, I haven't gone anywhere, my good friend Misty Steps hasn't sacrificed me in a blood ritual as she so frequently threatens to. Let's just say I've embarked on a new adventure of my own in my everyday life, and this one just so happened to start out with a lot of working and learning by doing, with a big deadline right out the gate. Oh boy. But I survived, and I have returned to Fable Academy to continue my personal brand of bullshit that you all know and love. You know, you'd think by now, as a society, we'd have collectively evolved past the point where some things just go without saying in general social situations. Like, to name a few examples off the top of my head, bragging about how much something costs doesn't make you look rich, it just makes you look bad with money. Pineapple does belong on pizza as long as the other toppings give their consent. Oh, and it's rude to control, change, alter, or recontextualize someone else's character without their knowledge or against their wishes. Especially when it puts them at odds with the rest of the party and forces conflict that the player now has to deal with. Today's story is a two-parter from the same player, so strap in, cause we're in for a long one. This story is by Mud Oblis. DM changed my character and made him evil without my permission. Hi, I had a previous post here where I mentioned this D&D campaign in a couple of replies, and I thought it would be interesting to tell this story too. This one takes place before the previous post and happens when we were in high school together. It is the same DM with the same players. There is a TLDR at the bottom. This is the story. Our DM is the only guy in our friend group, and all of the players, including me, are girls. We were about to start a campaign and the DM tells us to create a character and lets us have any magic item. He didn't care about how good it was or what it did, and even allowed the players to make custom magic items. I created my first male character, a blue dragonborn cleric, Zenith, strongly based on a character I was obsessed with at the time. I admittedly did not play the personality of this character well, but it was because I didn't prepare, and because the inspiration character was a lot more extroverted than I was comfortable with at the time. In Zenith's backstory, he had two very close dragonborn friends that they grew up with, one of which was a wizard who was studying in a library in the astral plane. The other was a blacksmith that lived with Zenith. The three of them had known each other for about 20 years. The magical item I gave Zenith was a necklace that allowed him to communicate with his friend in the astral plane, while also allowing him to summon a few small ghostly fiend creatures that would attack enemies for him. It was a gift the wizard friend had given both Zenith and the blacksmith while they were away. I thought it was a good magic item that had pretty reasonable abilities, and the DM accepted it. The backstory characters were only going to establish why the character has this magic item and to make this character very similar to his inspiration. At least, that's what I had planned. The campaign starts revealing that the only reason the DM gave us any magic item at all was because he was going to take it away right at the start to get all characters in the same place. It was a good idea. For all of the players, there was a clue left behind that would point them towards the city they had to be at. For Zenith, however, there was more than just a little thievery. The DM decided to fake kill the blacksmith friend, which I figured out when a spell didn't work, and kidnap them. I guess it was more incentive, but it felt a little much, especially because none of the other players got something like that. Now Zenith's motive was a lot different from the other characters. Anyways, the party gets to the city and classic D&D shenanigans ensue, with lore and basements and taverns and some classic fun. Then the party meets the big bad, a demon who runs a cult, and who was also the culprit that stole our magic items and Zenith's best friend. The demon was very upfront about stealing our stuff, and even treated us to some food and a meeting where he told us something along the lines of,
"I distributed all these magic items with other lords and ladies of the city, so you'll have to go to all of them."
This demon lord had Zenith's item, and as I had found out through some snooping, both the blacksmith and wizard friend. He knew that Zenith had found out about him kidnapping the friends and allowed Zenith to speak with them. But the DM played them very out of character. They were cagey and wouldn't tell Zenith anything. I get that maybe the DM just didn't know these characters, but he could have asked me a little about their personalities, and maybe considered that best friends of more than 20 years would act differently. After learning about the Demon Lord's cult/religion, which was actually pretty reasonable and less evil than what it had seemed, Zenith, being a cleric and wanting to do anything to save his friends, offered to join the Demon Lord's religion if it meant that his friends would be released. The Demon Lord was actually a reasonable guy and bound to his word, I believed, and agreed, on terms that Zenith had to rise in the ranks of the religion and perform certain tasks. It was a fair deal. Changing religions, however, meant that Zenith had forsaken his former religion and chose a more evil one, so the DM gave him the death domain from the DM's guide. It was pretty cool, and a show of how my character cares more about these friends than anything else. Eventually, Zenith was able to free his friends, but they, for some reason, hated him? Which was definitely not making sense, or how these characters would act. Then the bad stuff happened. Zenith, sometime in the midpoint of the campaign, suddenly was overtaken by the ancestry of his mother, a black and purple evil dragon, and became evil and had to fight the party. The DM and I had never talked about this. I didn't know that my character had this mother. I didn't know that I was going to randomly be evil, and I didn't want to fight the party. When this was revealed, I was just as surprised as everyone else, and I straight up told the DM right then that I did not want to be evil and fight the party. He told me that he could play my character instead, but I thought that would be worse and even less fun. The session was ending right there, however, so I had until the next session to think about it. I was pretty salty at the start of the next session, but I was a pretty big people pleaser back then. So I still went along with being a villain and played Zenith myself. I ended up damaging the party a lot, and I couldn't tell if just the party hated Zenith or if the players hated me too. My character ended up being defeated, and the magic of his mother, or something, was removed from him and sealed in a bottle, which made Zenith not evil again. The campaign continued, but the party didn't really trust Zenith anymore, and the players kept bringing up how I attacked them, focused more on the fact that I did it rather than the fact that it was out of my control in both cases. I didn't like it, but I continued the campaign with the other players, and ended up finishing it as intended. Zenith got a cleric domain centered around friendship, and the other players got new custom subclasses. The rest of the plot of the campaign was cool, but that surprise evil arc bothered me the whole time. A few other weird things happened with my characters afterwards, but it was just more of the DM playing Zenith's friends weirdly. I wouldn't call this one worse than the Aegis situation, but it was definitely a red flag that I should have noticed and acted on sooner. TLDR, the DM traumatizes my character, kidnaps backstory NPCs and plays them wrong, then gives my character another backstory, turns them evil, and forces them to fight the party, all without talking to me about it before it happened. A few clarifications. Yes, I am still playing with this DM. I am in the middle of a campaign right now, but once it ends, I will not be joining another one DM'd by him. The reason that I have tolerated this for so long is because he is my close friend. The players are all close friends, and also I have been a pretty bad pushover until recently. We were very young and still are, so we didn't really know how to deal with all of this. Despite the weird DM stuff, I want to end on good terms, and to have a good time with the players who are closer to me than the DM before we part ways. Okay, so first things first, the lion, the witch, and the audacity of this bitch. I can just play your character for you? DM missed the point of what OP was saying so catastrophically that I have to assume he believed in his heart of hearts that this was the best story idea ever, and that there was no possible way anyone could not enjoy it. But newsflash, D&D is everyone's story, not just the DM's. Sure, there's collaboration, and yeah, DM was responsible for playing Zenith's friends, and ultimately there's gonna be some differences in how DM handles them versus how OP intended them, especially since they're dripping in inspiration from the character Zenith was originally based on. But even that has a limit. The word of the day here is communication. Any and all of these twists could have been great for the story, but the problem is that the players were blindsided by them every step of the way. Sometimes a bait and switch can work really well, like in the case of the magic items being taken away at the start of the campaign. And yes, Zenith did volunteer to join the demon's cult, so the ramifications of that decision were ultimately organic to the player and the character. Hell, the DM could have built a lot more of this into that decision rather than just outright changing the character without OP's knowledge or permission, but when the DM started actively changing a character's backstory and forcing them to be antagonists just to serve what he thought was a cool story beat in his story, that was taking it a bridge too far. Since this story was posted relatively recently and OP mentions she's still playing with this DM and wants to end things amicably, I do hope she gets to do that. It really sounds like this game could have been great for everyone involved, but OP got the short end of the stick here in a big way with how DM handled her character and these twists. But we've got one more story to tell. OP mentioned another experience of theirs in this post, so let's take a look at that one as well. DM won't let me play my character because I am a woman. Best title I could think of, but there is a lot more to the story than just what the title states. Also, I know my DM scrolls Reddit, but I do not want this to be an issue again with us. I just want to vent about this crazy situation. There is a TLDR at the bottom, quotation marks are copy-pasted Discord messages. I'm in a D&D group with my 4 closest friends. Our DM is the only man in our group, and he is generally a good DM. In December, he told us that we were about to start a new campaign and that we needed to create a new character with 3 main guidelines: minimal pre-campaign trauma, living parents, and a spellcasting class. We were also not allowed to tell each other about our characters before the campaign, so we wouldn't pick our characters based on how the other players chose. This campaign was going to be more roleplay heavy than the previous ones I had done before, so our DM wanted different body language or voices when we played our characters. This was a little bit of a problem for me. Because all of the players are close friends, we have a tendency to joke with each other and break character easily. It's also reasonably hard for me to roleplay when I worry that I will get teased for how I'm acting. However, I was confident that if I set boundaries with the other players before the campaign started, I would be able to maintain my character's personality. When I started to create my character for this campaign, I specifically wanted to play a character that wasn't female. In the last campaign, I played a feral harpy character with a homebrew dexterity-based fighter class. It was fun, but the other 3 players played male or non-binary characters, while my character was the only girl, so I wanted to try something different this time. I came up with a strong character, a non-binary warforged who is struggling with seeing themselves as human, Aegis. They were a logic-minded soldier built for war and used to be in charge of a small squadron of other warforged in charge of defending the archers, so they were going to be more defensive in their actions and spells. Being NB was an important part of Aegis because I wanted them to struggle with making relationships and feeling worthy of human decency. Being built during the war they were in, they were taught not to make lasting relationships because they would eventually die. They were neutral about their gender too, so it makes the most sense for them to be NB. After the war, they found themselves very restless with nothing to do, so another former soldier that they live with sends them to a magical college, the setting of our campaign, to take their mind off the war and find a new purpose. For their class, I wanted to do something like a paladin, where the character learns to use magic combined with their fighting abilities. The DM had put out a list of all the classes with magic in them, and Eldritch Knight Fighter was on it. It was the perfect fit and captured Aegis perfectly, although a little stereotypical, but for a valid reason. The DM even suggested this class when I was throwing around ideas. However, things began to get suspicious when we talked more about my character. My DM first told me that he had doubts about my ability to roleplay my character. I told him I understood. It was a character type I hadn't played before, but I was actively detailing my character's personality in a Google Doc with character question templates and backstory paragraphs. I believed I was prepared to roleplay this character effectively. He asked me for the gender of my character, and I told him that Aegis was non-binary. His response was, and non-binary Civil War veteran with PTSD. Is there a way to alter that so you can roleplay it better? This is when he suggested that I change my character's gender to be a woman. I told the DM that I liked Aegis how they were, but I suggested that I could make a different construct character based on lamps because I thought this was also a good idea. And I was so early in character creation that starting over would not bother me. Aegis didn't even have a name yet. He further clarified that he thought that the war veteran with PTSD would be the most difficult for me to roleplay, even though he mentioned changing Aegis's gender. But I explained that I was fairly confident in my ability to do so. I had the ability to act out and choose what my character would do just fine, but being the character and the vibe that the players get from me would be the hard part. But I could explain this to the players and do my best to remind the players that I am Aegis, and not my out-of-game self. I also did not plan on playing them as very traumatized, just used to war as their base experience. They would merely have habits from being a soldier, not flashbacks or panic attacks. After this back and forth was settled, the DM messaged me a day later, asking if I would be playing as an abjuration wizard for the first 5 levels of the campaign. After this back and forth was settled, the DM messaged me a day later, asking if I would be playing as an abjuration wizard for the first 5 levels of the campaign. I confusedly told him that I wouldn't because starting as a fighter and moving to Eldritch Knight would fit Aegis best, as explained before. The reason they were sent to college in the first place was to try something new to occupy their mind, instead of something familiar, so starting as a wizard wouldn't really work out either. But I was willing to change this if having magic early on in the game was super important. I even suggested small modifications to the fighter class to get the subclass early or something, but he seemed pretty reasonably hesitant to homebrew my class. After one more explanation of why I considered being an Eldritch Knight important to Aegis's design, though still remaining open to changes if magic was more important in this role-playing aspect, the DM decided to give Aegis a recharging magical core item that allowed them to cast some spells at the beginning of the campaign. So it was all settled. I thought everything was good about my character now that these issues were addressed. I was so wrong. 22 days later, the DM asks, what is Aegis's gender? Yes, Warforged have gender. Again, I remind him that Aegis is non-binary. He responds, what gender are you best playing as? That's what's important. I told him that I am fine with any. I personally use she/they pronouns, but am fine with being called by any pronoun, so it was not something I was uncomfortable about. I wanted an androgynous character because it felt best. The DM responded, stubbornly, to say the least. I feel like you're trying to preserve the original concept of a fleeting character. You can change things about the character so that you can roleplay as them better. But, as I had mentioned previously, I felt I was confident in how I could roleplay Aegis. This wasn't a problem for me, but potentially for other players that would have difficulty remembering who I was really roleplaying as, something out of my control. I said I would think about it more, but it was just an excuse for me to find a way to state my answer firmly without seeming very rude. 4 days later, I had my response. Aegis will be non-binary. I told him that choosing to be female might limit the perspective of how other players and NPCs see them, and that me being female would not help me play a female Aegis because our personality traits are very different. I made sure to ask him to specifically address any concerns he had about Aegis being NB because I was failing to understand the issue with my choice. I really wanted to know where he was coming from so we could compromise. His only response was, the passive-aggressive is crazy. I clarified that I did not intend to sound passive-aggressive, and just wanted to sound confident in my response. My previous decisions on the gender of Aegis may have come across as unsure. The DM did not respond. I asked for any scenarios that would be useful for my character to prepare for, or for any personality gaps that should be fixed before the first session. He did not address these questions, instead asking about which weapon and shield Aegis would use. We then got into another argument where the DM expressed concern about the fact that I wanted Aegis to be a leader character, but I had described them as minimally speaking. He said Aegis should be more assertive. I clarified that I meant their sentences were short and to the point, not quiet. He stereotyped my character to like a paladin, but I didn't know how stereotyping them removed the important backstory details. I explained why I didn't like how the DM stereotyped Aegis, defined more of the type of leader Aegis would be, experienced and logical, and the issue seemed to end. I began to answer the DM's required character questions before the campaign, and drew my official character design for Aegis. I asked if everything was okay with these, and he again responded with almost nothing, save for an image of a Minecraft copper golem. Aegis was made of copper materials. I was a little upset that Aegis was being stereotyped again, so I asked him for genuine feedback. The DM was worried that I would be too rigid with the vision of my character, which was a valid concern, but I assured him that the reason that I have been so picky about their stuff so far is because I need a steady base to start the character. I have strong ideas for the foundation, not the future. The DM asked a few more questions, but they were settled without much more discussion. Then, the DM told me in person that I had to have a female character. This was because all 3 of the other players were also women, and Aegis also needed to be a woman so they could share a dorm room. It was important that we shared a dorm room so that the party would get along better. This came out of nowhere, to be honest. If this had been a big issue before, why hadn't he said anything? I tried my best to offer compromises, 16 in total, to keep Aegis as they are and still live in the same dorm rooms with the rest of the party. The DM gave me kind of an ultimatum. It occurs to me that I am the only person who knows how the dormitory system works at the college, so I'll just simplify it to a situation for you to answer. There are 2 dorm rooms for you 4. Aegis is either a female and there are 2 people per dorm, or Aegis is not a female and they have their own dorm and the other 3 share one. At this point, I knew I had to thoroughly explain why Aegis being female would ruin the character. I thought that making them female would make them too similar to the character I played last campaign. I understood why making Aegis female would be an easier route to connecting the party together, but I didn't understand why this was the only option. I did not want to sacrifice an important part of Aegis's character for a small issue that could easily be fixed by changing a tiny rule. Despite trying my best to stay neutral-toned but confident in myself, I regrettably even used AI to make sure that the tone wasn't off. The DM still saw my response as passive-aggressive. He told me things like, if being non-binary is that important to Aegis, that's probably not a good thing to be controlling that much of your character. And he seemed to think that simply changing my character with female would fix a perceived schism within the social dynamics of the party. He then sent the paragraph that made me genuinely upset. I am not confident in your role-playing abilities to play as a non-binary individual. Whenever any of you play as characters that are not your gender, I never associate in my head what gender your character is and will always just think that character is a girl. I have seen that you cannot pull off being a dude, and my last D&D character showed me that you have wonderful role-playing abilities, but they are not used properly when you don't play as a woman. This is why almost every single person who plays D&D plays a character who is their gender. These were crazy things to say. My only male character, the one he is referring to, was firstly the first time I had ever played a guy in D&D. Additionally, it was strongly based on, read literally, a character I was obsessed with but could not replicate at all, and had no forethought about how I would actually play the character, especially without embarrassment. I also told him that, frankly, I do not care about your confidence in me, because it is my own confidence that really affects the character. I find it a little rude that you would blatantly claim that I would not be a good fit for a non-binary character despite my constant telling you otherwise. I can do nothing to make you think that I am non-binary, but what matters most is that the actions and characterization of Aegis in the role-play setting, not the gender that you perceive them as. Aegis's gender affects them internally and guides some of their actions, but if you or other players fail to see Aegis's gender because of my physical appearances, I can do nothing. That probably came off as a little rude, and I regret that, but I was beginning to lose my patience and hold back my anger. I ended with an ultimatum of my own. I genuinely do not want to be a huge problem for you or the campaign, but it does not seem like my attempts at compromise will satisfy both of us. Non-binary fits Aegis best, and I will not be changing their gender. If this conflicts too harshly with the campaign and there are no other options, I can create a new character. I ended up creating a new character that I love. A slightly nerfed Astral Elf Astral Sorcerer modified werewolf, but the fights with my DM still bug me to this day, and probably will for a while. After making my new character, I found out that the reason the DM had made the final push of Aegis being female was because one of the other players who originally had a male character scrapped it and created a new female one. This implies, however, that the DM was fine with a male character rooming with an NB, but not with a female character rooming with an MB, which, to me, is very unfair and weird. TLDR, I made a non-binary D&D character and was forced to make a new character because the DM forced them to be female so the party could get along easier. I wanted the character to stay non-binary because it was important to their personality and character traits. Anyways, I just wanted to get this off my chest and hear the opinions of random strangers on the internet taken with a grain of salt. Am I the asshole? This DM is starting to get on my nerves! There's so much to unpack here, so let's just start with the part that's not going to turn my comment section into a war zone worthy of Aegis. This DM is treating this game like he's Stanley fucking Kubrick, complete with just being a dick to women. I mean, who the hell cares so much about how good a person is role-playing as their character? Did anyone care when Sam Riegel was playing an alcoholic female goblin? Tell me, DM, are you writing the script for them? Are you going to give them all line reads? Are you planning on bringing a clapperboard to the sessions and asking, do you think you could do that any better if you don't feel the dialogue? I thought he was being a bit of a backseat player in the first story, but now I see he is just a guy who is obsessed with telling his own story using your characters, and by extension you as players, as props, cast members in his personal production that will be seen by no one. Frankly, it's coming off a little bit sexist too, since he's the only guy commanding this group of women, and he seems so fixated on making sure most, if not all, the characters are always women all the time. At this point, this isn't even a case of, oh, there's dragons and war robots, but a woman playing any other gender is where you draw the line. It's just being overly controlling and trying to turn everyone's game into his personal power fantasy. But let's get to the big point here. The non-binary debate. Oh god, the comments are going to be insufferable! In case you're new here, I am non-binary, both here and in my real life as of recently. I also know a lot of non-binary people who present, identify, and live in very different and beautiful ways. And let me tell you one thing. If you've ever met one non-binary person, you've met one non-binary person. Very few non-binary experiences are identical. Some are similar, and some aspects are, by definition, rather universal. But everyone's experience is unique to them. With all that in mind, let me just say this. OP, you are a fucking queen for fighting for Aegis as hard as you did and never compromising about their identity. It's not about presentation or action or behavior, it's all internal, and he was turning it into a huge problem, which probably just says more about him than anything else. I know you're a people pleaser, and maybe I was a little disappointed that you ended up creating a new character for him when I would have just walked away from this queer-phobic headache on legs. But I can understand why, and I appreciate that if Aegis wasn't non-binary, it wouldn't be Aegis, so good on you for sticking to your guns about that. At the end of the day, this was a power play by an overly controlling DM who just wanted to craft his perfect vision for his game and exclude anything or anyone that he felt would get in the way. And yeah, for reference, being non-binary isn't a one-to-one parallel with being androgynous or having no gender at all. Many non-binary people present closer to masculine or feminine than the other, or maybe both, or neither. Sometimes it's just a state of mind, or how they refer to themselves, and sometimes it does include elements of external presentation as well. But here is the core of it. It's always internal, and it's never anyone else's goddamn business. Ironically, this experience with the DM has given you a first-hand look at what it can be like to be non-binary. It very much can be constantly justifying and explaining yourself to random people who have zero stake in how you live your life, trying to escape the boxes that people around you are constantly trying to force you into. And yeah, there's a lot of times where we feel like we have to compromise who we are for the sake of people around us or to be accepted. But fuck me if that has to include not being able to be a robot dorming with other spellcasters in a magic academy. Cause take it from me, a non-binary goat who lives at a magic academy, it's only as much of a headache as people choose to make it. And just in case you, OP, or anyone else watching this video are struggling with matters of identity right now, maybe you feel like you might be non-binary yourself, or trans, or queer, or any kind of beautiful swatch of color. in the bright wide rainbow cutting through this miserable world, you are valid. You are deserving of love. You are always welcome at my table. And anyone who has a problem with you and your heart, they can kiss my non-binary hiney. But that's just my thoughts on these stories. What do you folks think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you again real soon for our next lesson in Fable Academy.